quiet decline you don't notice. Let me ask you something that might be uncomfortable, but important. What have you been tolerating in your life for far too long? Not the big disasters, not the obvious betrayals. I'm talking about the quiet things, the subtle slips, the slow erosion. Because most decline doesn't happen with a dramatic crash. It begins in silence. It begins when you start saying, "It's not that bad." When you smile through a disrespectful comment. When you stay in a job that no longer aligns with who you are. When you excuse a relationship that consistently drains you. And here's the thing. You don't even notice it happening. Not right away. It's disguised as patience, as being easygoing, as being the strong one. But underneath that mask, you are slowly teaching yourself something dangerous. This is okay. This is what I deserve. And that's where the damage begins. Because every time you tolerate something that chips away at your peace, every time you stay silent when something violates your values, every time you pretend you're fine while your soul whispers, "I'm not," you're not just tolerating a situation. You're training your identity. You're reinforcing to yourself and to the world what you accept, what you allow, what you believe you're worth. And here's the truth no one tells you. You become what you tolerate. Not just in your relationships, not just in your career, but in your inner life, in the thoughts you allow to repeat, in the standards you quietly lower, in the energy you give away to things that don't grow you. Maybe it started small. You let a friend talk over you. You brushed off another missed gym session. You said yes when your body screamed no. No big deal, right? But over time, those moments pile up. And without realizing it, you've built a life around what you never truly wanted, simply because you didn't say enough. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes more than philosophy. It becomes survival. Because as Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. But if you never pause and ask yourself what you've been silently enduring, you'll never realize how far you've drifted. So today, I'm not here to shame you. I'm here to wake you up, to help you see that what you tolerate isn't just external, it's internal. It's shaping your self-worth, your clarity, your future. And if that scares you a little, good. That means something inside you still remembers who you were meant to be. So let me ask you again, what have you been tolerating for too long? That question might sting, but don't look away, because in that discomfort lies the beginning of power. Stay with me. In the next part, we'll explore the deeper emotional patterns that keep us stuck in cycles of toleration. And more importantly, how to break free. What are you really allowing? Let me ask you something most people avoid. What are you silently allowing into your life that's slowly draining your strength? Tolerating something isn't just a passive act. It's not about putting up with something out there. It's a quiet decision you make over and over again, not to act, not to speak, not to set a boundary, not to walk away. And often we don't even realize we're doing it. It shows up in subtle but corrosive ways. You stay in a job that hasn't lit you up in years, not because it fulfills you, but because it's familiar. You keep answering messages from a friend who always makes you feel smaller, not because they uplift you, but because you don't want to seem rude. You live in a routine that's all noise and no nourishment, not because it supports you, but because it's what you're used to. And then there's the voice inside your head, the one that criticizes you before you even try, the one that whispers, "You're not ready, you'll fail. Why bother?" You listen to that voice more than you realize. You tolerate it. You let it decide what's possible for you. But here's the truth no one wants to admit. Toleration is a choice, and every time you choose to endure something that chips away at your spirit, you send a message to your mind, your heart, and your soul. This is what I deserve. That message becomes a belief. That belief becomes your standard. And over time, your standard becomes your life. Let's pause for a moment. Imagine this. If someone treated your best friend the way you allow yourself to be treated, would you be okay with that? If not, why are you okay with it for yourself? Because here's what Stoic wisdom reminds us. You don't just live your beliefs, you reinforce them moment by moment through action or inaction. Epictetus said it clearly. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Your values aren't found in the quotes you post or the books you highlight. They're found in the boundaries you keep, in the standards you uphold, in the quiet choices you make when no one's watching. So ask yourself, what have you been silently tolerating that doesn't reflect the person you're trying to become? Because the gap between who you are and who you could be is often filled with the things you've been unwilling to confront. That job that exhausts you, that friend who drains you, that habit that numbs you, that thought that sabotages you. And let's be honest, tolerating isn't always about weakness. Sometimes it looks like kindness, like patience, like giving someone another chance, like telling yourself it's not that bad. But you know better. You feel it in your gut. You feel it in the quiet hours when no one else is around and the truth finally speaks. So don't just ask what you're tolerating. Ask why. Why does it feel safer to shrink than to speak? Why does it feel easier to endure than to evolve? Because here's the thing. Every time you tolerate something misaligned, you delay something beautiful from emerging. You stay rooted in a version of life that doesn't honor your deeper potential. And you don't have to anymore. This isn't about blowing up your life overnight. It's not about becoming ruthless or cold. It's about becoming honest. It's about saying, this is no longer acceptable because I respect myself too much to keep pretending it is. You want to know how to change your life? Start by changing what you allow. And if that sounds too simple, try it. Try saying no to something you usually say yes to, just once. Try protecting your peace like it actually matters, because it does. You don't need permission to stop tolerating what hurts you. You just need clarity and courage, because in the end, you won't be remembered for what you endured. You'll be remembered for what you chose. And if you want to choose a life that's aligned, grounded, and powerful, it starts with no longer being okay with what quietly breaks you. The Stoic mirror. What you allow, you reinforce. Let's pause for a moment and turn the mirror toward ourselves. Have you ever wondered how life gets to a place where everything feels overwhelming, yet strangely familiar? How stress becomes your new normal? How chaos, noise, or even disrespect stops feeling unacceptable and starts feeling expected? Here's the truth we often miss. You don't just experience your reality, you reinforce it. Every time you allow something that doesn't honor your values, you're teaching your mind and body to accept it. Not just once, but repeatedly, until your nervous system begins to believe, this is what life is. This is what I deserve. This is safe. That's the danger of toleration. It's not passive, it's conditioning. The Stoics warned us, long before modern psychology caught up. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Notice what he didn't say. He didn't say, control everything. He didn't say, fix everyone. He said, focus on what's within. And what's within? Your choices, your standards, your reactions. Your boundaries. You don't get stronger by enduring what breaks you. You get stronger by aligning your life with what uplifts you and by letting go of what doesn't. Let's bring in a modern truth. Psychologists now understand that the more you expose yourself to a stressful environment, the more your brain adapts to that state as normal. Your dopamine, the neurochemical for motivation and reward, starts misfiring. You become addicted to chaos, numb to burnout, tolerant of mistreatment, not because you want to be weak, but because you've trained yourself to be okay with it. But here's the thing, being okay isn't the same as being fulfilled. You weren't meant to just survive your days. You were meant to shape them with clarity, dignity, and peace. And dignity starts with refusing to reinforce the very things that keep you small. Let me offer a metaphor. Imagine a garden. You spot one weed, just one. It's not a big deal, you say, so you leave it. Next week there are 3. The week after, 10. A few months in, your garden is overrun. That's how toleration works. One ignored comment, one excuse for someone's disrespect, one day where you silence your voice to keep the peace. You do it once, then twice, then daily. Before long, you're not just putting up with things. You've built a life around them. But you don't have to. You can reclaim your mental and emotional garden, not by controlling the world outside you, but by protecting the world within you. Start here. What behavior have you normalized that once felt wrong? What part of your life feels heavy, but you keep telling yourself it's fine? Where are you betraying your values just to avoid discomfort? The Stoic path isn't about perfection. It's about awareness and adjustment. It's about noticing where your standards have quietly slipped and choosing intentionally to raise them again. Because the truth is, you are always training yourself, whether you mean to or not. Each time you speak up, you strengthen your voice. Each time you choose rest over chaos, you strengthen your boundaries. Each time you walk away from what doesn't honor you, you remind yourself, I am worth more than this. This isn't just philosophy, it's rewiring your nervous system. It's building emotional strength. It's choosing alignment over acceptance. And here's a deeper layer. When you hold yourself to higher standards, others rise too. Not because you force them, but because your energy shifts. Your presence speaks louder than your words. You don't have to explain yourself to everyone. You just have to embody the life you know you're meant to live. So next time you're tempted to stay silent, to make peace at the cost of your own, to say, it's fine. Pause. Ask yourself, am I reinforcing something I want to grow or something I should release? Because life doesn't just happen to you. It responds to the standards you set. And the longer you tolerate what drains you, the longer you delay what fulfills you. You're not here to endure a life that's beneath you. You're here to elevate one that reflects you. And that starts now. Reclaim your standards, how to stop settling. Let me ask you something simple, but powerful. What have you been settling for? Not just what you complain about, not just what you wish would change, but what you've allowed to stay, even though your soul knows it's beneath you. Maybe it's a job that pays the bills but drains your spirit. Maybe it's a relationship that's more about habit than love. Maybe it's the way you speak to yourself. Critical, impatient, never enough. This is the quiet erosion we don't notice. Not because we're weak, but because we've forgotten one essential truth. Your standards shape your reality. When you tolerate something long enough, it becomes your baseline. And once it becomes normal, you stop questioning it. You stop asking, is this right for me? You just keep surviving it. But survival isn't why you're here. You were made to live, to create, to grow, to walk through life with dignity, not exhaustion. And dignity begins when you reclaim your standards. Let's be clear, reclaiming your standards doesn't require rage. You don't need to slam doors or burn bridges. You don't have to justify your peace to people who never respected your pain. Sometimes the most powerful shift starts with quiet clarity. You wake up one morning and say, "This ends with me." You look at the things you've been tolerating and whisper, "I'm not doing this anymore," not because I'm angry, but because I finally see clearly. Clarity is love, just sharpened, and that clarity will take you places anger never could. Here are some real-life reminders. You can leave a relationship without bitterness just because it no longer aligns with your values. You can walk away from a job before you hit burnout, not because you're weak, but because you're wise enough to pivot. You can change your identity, your lifestyle, your direction without asking for permission from anyone. That's not rebellion. That's self-respect. The Stoics taught us, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Epictetus. Why? Because when you raise your standards, the world doesn't always understand. You'll be told, "You've changed." You'll be told, "You're too sensitive now." You'll be told, "Just be grateful." But here's the thing. Gratitude isn't about accepting less than you deserve. And kindness isn't about letting yourself be walked over. True kindness includes self-protection. It includes looking in the mirror and saying, "I will not betray myself to make others comfortable." So now I ask you to reflect honestly. What do I truly want my life to feel like? Where am I settling in the name of peace, but losing my inner fire? If I stop tolerating what drains me, what kind of energy would I have to build the life I dream of? Because every time you raise your standards, you're not being difficult. You're being deliberate. You're saying, "I will no longer live at the mercy of low expectations, mine or anyone else's." And this is where transformation begins, not in huge, dramatic moments, but in small, powerful decisions. Saying no without guilt, saying yes to the unknown, creating boundaries that feel uncomfortable at first, but liberating later, refusing to explain your worth to people who never truly listened. Over time, these choices change your identity. You begin to trust yourself again. You begin to attract relationships rooted in mutual respect. You begin to show up for your dreams, not just your obligations. You don't become arrogant. You become anchored, and people will feel the difference. They'll sense that you're not trying to prove anything because you've already decided who you are. You've stopped settling. You've stopped shrinking. You've started honoring the life that was calling to you all along. So if you've been waiting for a sign, for permission, for some perfect moment to reclaim your standards, this is it. Let this be the moment you stop saying, "I guess this is just how it is," and start saying, "This is how I rise." Because settling isn't humility, and walking away isn't weakness. It's the highest form of self-trust. And when you begin to live from that place, you don't just feel more alive, you become more alive. Self-discipline is a form of self-respect. Let's talk about something people rarely connect: self-discipline and self-respect. In a world that often confuses freedom with indulgence, discipline gets a bad reputation. We hear the word and immediately think of restriction, control, even punishment. But what if discipline wasn't about punishment at all? What if it's one of the purest forms of self-love? Because here's the truth. What you tolerate in your own behavior teaches your mind what you're worth. Every time you skip the workout you promise yourself, every time you delay that project again, saying, "I'll start tomorrow," every time you scroll mindlessly at midnight, knowing you need rest, Every time you eat not from hunger, but to escape a feeling you haven't faced, you're sending a message to yourself. And that message is, my comfort is more important than my character. But comfort doesn't build strength. Comfort doesn't create freedom. Comfort doesn't give you the pride of looking in the mirror and saying, I showed up for myself today. The Stoics understood this deeply. Seneca once wrote, no man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. Why would he say that? Because adversity, even in its smallest form, waking up early, sticking to a goal, resisting a distraction, is where you earn your self-respect, not from others, from yourself. Modern neuroscience actually confirms this. When you constantly tolerate less than behavior, skipping routines, giving into impulses, delaying what matters, you train your brain to normalize it. You literally wire your nervous system to accept weakness. But here's the good news. Every small act of discipline, no matter how tiny, rewires that signal. It tells your mind, your emotions, your future self, I am someone who honors my own standards. And slowly, that becomes your identity. You don't need grand gestures. You don't need to transform your life overnight. You need small, repeated acts that say, I care about my life enough to act, even when I don't feel like it. Let me give you a personal reframe that's changed how many people approach discipline. Stop asking, what do I feel like doing right now? Start asking, what would the most self-respecting version of me do right now? That shift changes everything, because the version of you who respects themselves doesn't need perfection. They need integrity. They don't need to run a marathon. They need to lace up their shoes and take the first step. They don't need to feel motivated. They need to remember their values. Ask yourself, what have I been tolerating in the way I treat my body, my time, my mind? And what would shift if I made discipline not a chore, but a declaration that says, I matter. My energy matters. My dreams matter enough to be protected by structure, because that's what true freedom is. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom to become who you're capable of being. Epictetus once said, no great thing is created suddenly, and neither is self-respect. It's built, one disciplined choice at a time. You start small. You keep your word to yourself. You set boundaries with your distractions. You nourish your body like it's a vessel, not a trash bin. You give yourself the gift of enough sleep, movement, silence, and no one applauds. No one sees it, but you feel it. And over time, that quiet respect you feel in your bones, that's confidence, that's strength, that's dignity. So if you've been living in the gray zone of, I'll do better tomorrow, let this be the line in the sand. Not to shame yourself, but to reclaim yourself. You are not what you say you'll do. You are what you repeatedly choose when no one's watching. And when your choices align with your highest values, not just your temporary feelings, that's when your life changes. That's when discipline becomes devotion, not to an image, but to your real self. So today, choose one act, one routine, one habit, and follow through. Not because you feel like it, but because you finally see the connection between discipline and dignity. Let go without giving. And let me ask you something. Are you holding on to something just because letting go feels like losing? We've been conditioned to think that walking away means we've failed. That if we don't fight harder, explain longer, or try one more time, we're giving up. But the truth is far more powerful. Sometimes the highest form of strength is knowing when something is no longer worth your energy. Not everything in life deserves a fight. Some people don't need your final word. They need your silence. Some situations don't require a dramatic ending. They simply deserve your absence. That's not weakness. That's clarity. Let me give you a metaphor. Imagine you're standing in a sinking boat. The wood is cracking. Water is rising. You're trying to patch the holes, hoping the boat will stabilize, but it keeps leaking. And deep down, you know it's going down. Now here's the question. If you jump off that boat and swim to shore, are you quitting? Or are you choosing to live? That's the kind of emotional clarity we often lack. Because the moment we start identifying with our suffering, we begin to think staying in the chaos is noble. But here's the truth. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. You don't have to sink just to prove how loyal you are. The Stoics understood this deeply. They didn't tell us to force others to change. They didn't glorify suffering. They taught us this simple, brutal truth. You have control over your mind, not over outside events. Marcus Aurelius. You can't control who appreciates you. You can't control if they apologize. You can't even control how the story ends. But you can control what you engage with. You can choose peace over proving a point. You can choose silence over re-explaining yourself to people who never listened in the first place. Letting go isn't about losing. It's about refusing to lose yourself. It's about saying, I no longer choose to abandon my peace just to stay in something that's already abandoned me. Now, I'm not saying every ending should be cold or abrupt. Sometimes closure is needed. Sometimes words must be said. But other times, most times, the real healing begins when you stop trying to convince them and start choosing yourself. It's okay to leave the room without slamming the door. It's okay to stop arguing and simply step away. It's okay to outgrow places, habits, and people who no longer align with your values. That's not cruelty. That's evolution. And if you're still doubting it, still wondering if it's okay to let go without making a scene, let me offer this. You don't need to fight for a seat at a table that drains your soul. You can build your own table, one where peace is welcome, one where dignity is served, one where you don't have to shrink to belong. So here's your reflection. What are you still clinging to out of fear, not truth? What relationship, role, or routine have you stayed in? Not because it lifts you, but because you're scared of the silence that comes after leaving. And more importantly, what would your life feel like if you walked away from what's been silently breaking you? Letting go doesn't mean you're heartless. It means you finally found the strength to protect your heart. So no, you're not giving in. You're growing up. You're rising above the noise. You're choosing the quiet kind of power that doesn't need to be loud to be real. Because at the end of the day, you don't have to make them see your worth. You just have to stop giving it away. Toleration is a teacher, but don't stay in its class too long. Toleration can be a teacher. It teaches us patience. It teaches us compassion. It teaches us how to breathe through discomfort, how to stay calm when things aren't perfect, and how to extend grace both to others and to ourselves. But here's what most people never realize. Toleration is only meant to be the beginning of your growth, not your permanent address. Yes, it can stretch you. Yes, it can make you stronger. But if you stay too long in the house of endurance, you start to forget you were ever meant to move forward. You begin to confuse resilience with resignation. You start calling it strength when deep down, it's really just fear wearing a mask. Let me ask you something. Are there things in your life right now that you've been tolerating, not because they serve you, but because they're familiar? A draining friendship that never pours back into you. A job that steals your energy but pays your bills. A daily habit that comforts you in the moment, but quietly erodes your self-respect over time. If any of that rings true, I want you to hear this loud and clear. You don't have to fight everything, but you do have to stop accepting what quietly breaks you. Not all damage is loud. Some of the most harmful things in our lives are the ones we tolerate in silence. The things that chip away at our self-worth slowly, quietly, repeatedly. The Stoics never said to be passive. They said to be wise with where you place your energy. Epictetus reminded us, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. That's not about pleasing the world. That's about aligning your life with your inner truth. That's about raising your standard, not to be perfect, but to be whole. Because every act of self-respect rewrites your story. Every small decision to stop tolerating what hurts you starts a new chapter. So here's your invitation today. Grab a piece of paper or open the Notes app on your phone and write this at the top. What I'm no longer willing to tolerate. List just 3 things. That's it. Maybe it's how someone speaks to you. Maybe it's your own negative self-talk. Maybe it's a routine that's been keeping you stuck. Then, choose one small action, not a grand gesture, just one shift, a boundary, a conversation, a commitment to yourself. Because change doesn't begin with rage. It begins with clarity, and it grows with consistency. You're not here to just survive your life. You're here to create it. And that creation begins the moment you stop settling. So I'll leave you with this final question. If you stop tolerating what quietly breaks you, what kind of strength might finally emerge? Don't stay in the class of endurance longer than you need to. Learn from it, graduate, and move on. Because life is too short to live below your worth.